Well, hello everyone. I'm Tam and welcome to my YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe because my YouTube channel is difficult to find. So if you lose it, you may never find it again. So today we're going to talk about introverted jerks. Yeah, I said it. Introverted jerks. Now, before you become offended, the word jerk can be applied to any and, well, not everyone. Most people are not jerks, but the term jerk can be applied to introverts or extroverts or any MBTI type. But today we are looking at jerks and we're tacking introvert onto them. When someone is a jerk and they just happen to be introverted, does that change the dynamic? Does it make them look any different? That this is a very extroverted world in which we live in, and introverts are misunderstood. So we definitely don't want to play into any type of stereotype or make anyone who is an introvert feel even more isolated. But I would like to separate an introverted person from an introverted jerk. Introversion is such a unique trait. And by the way, did you know that there can be 4 different kinds of introversion? So there can be social, thinking, anxious, and restrained. So just hearing those words, if you're an introvert, which one do you feel that you relate to the most? Yahoo.com, when asked who is the kindest introvert, they said ISFJs are the kindest introverted personality because they are sensitive souls, they are kind, affectionate, and will lend their support to their dear ones. Introverts can do things that extroverts can't. They can go into their own world. They are very kind, sweet, thoughtful, helpful, amazing introverts. But let's talk about jerks. Let's get to the juicy part. It can be defined as an unlikable person, one who is cruel, rude, or small-minded. A jerk can be applied to any type. But I think when you put introversion on top of a jerk, think about it. Introverts, some introverted types like INTJs are known for their stare. Like that's one clue that people say, oh, that's an INTJ. Like they're looking into the window of your soul. ISFPs, some of them will do that. Some ISFJs will do that as well, where they gaze into you. They might be lost in thoughts. An introverted person, if an extroverted is talking to them, an introvert might get kind of nervous or start talking way too much because it's something about that intense gaze that just makes you tell things or say things that you weren't even intending on saying. I have been in settings, in a particular setting that was introverted world, and there were a lot of not bad behaving, but just unlikable introverts. And what I would do was compare them to the likable introverts and say, well, these people over here are very respectful, they're kind, they are in their own world sometimes. Sometimes introverts will walk by you and they won't say anything because they're in their own world, they're in their own mind. And that's always kind of fascinating and intriguing to me. But if you speak to them, they'll speak back, they'll say hello. They know politeness, they know how to say, how are you today? I'm great. They know protocols. And think of the challenges of being an introvert in an extroverted world where everything is super fast paced. People don't understand when you need some think time to come up with your best ideas and best answers. So it's kind of nice to be an extrovert in an introverted world since it's so rare. But I was in an introverted world and it was really interesting because I think the person who hired them, just knowing her background, she was abandoned by her mother. And so the people that she hired, she was like, I personally selected you. These people were cold, rigid, rude, disrespectful, aloof, withdrawn. She was attracted to someone who would naturally reject her, like her own mother did. And I know that might sound crazy to people, but that's kind of how the ENFJ mind works. We kind of go a little deeper, like, how did all of these mean introverted people end up in the same building when it's hard to find an introvert? When I looked at the handwriting of these folks, most of them were left slanters, which is also rare, which is also in your own world. It could be a sign of introversion, but it could also be a sign, and not always. You have to look at many, many traits, but it can also be a clue of maybe kind of a tough upbringing in some ways. Maybe they weren't cared for as much as they needed to. Maybe they weren't given as much attention. Maybe they were pushed away. Maybe they weren't protected as much as they needed to be. And so they learn these defense mechanisms to protect themselves, to fight, to be defensive, to be rude and push people away. I think introverts, something that we need to be careful of is that an introvert might need to close their door to recuperate, to not feel so overwhelmed. So we have to separate their need for rejuvenation time and not be offended, like, oh, they're pushing me away. They don't want to be engaged. They don't want to come hang out. They have a different type of energy. That is not a bad thing. Extroverts can be overbearing at times and give way too many orders and too many things for people to do. But if you have an introvert that is constantly has a sign on their door saying do not knock, which I experienced there, then it could be that they are putting up the blocks. Like they don't want to be startled, like they don't want to be shocked, or walking in on them could be too jarring for them. So it's a protective thing. But when you are blatantly disrespectful in this society, we have to sort of develop a politeness or a way of showing respect. And when there's utter disregard or rudeness, that isn't okay. There was a lot of jealousy and envy and put downs and looking at each other sideways. Envy and jealousy. Envy is the painful feeling of wanting what someone else has, like attributes or possessions. And if you're jealous, you feel threatened, protective, or fearful of losing one's position or situation to someone else. So I saw that. It was like, I need to be important, which all people need to feel important and valued. But there was this trampling upon, or this icy coldness, or I need to put someone else down in order to feel better. Both involve a feeling of desire for what another person has, but jealousy is usually thought to be more negative. It often involves resentment toward the other person. Envy is also a negative feeling, like a mix of admiration and discontent, but the word doesn't usually imply hostility. I could see that in a lot of the people that were there. Can you imagine being in a romantic relationship with someone who is a jerk and they're an introverted jerk? So I think that can intensify the jerkness. You may get involved with somebody romantically and it might take a while to see that part of them or to pick up on it. Whereas an extrovert, everybody knows they're a jerk. Oh my gosh, they're so loud, or they're boisterous, or they're going off on people or putting people down out loud. It might be harder to detect an introverted jerk, but once you do, I would say be careful not to become romantically involved with that person because they're going to make you miserable. I knew somebody who was married to an introverted jerk, and the person was nice to everybody, but was a jerk to their mate, like really cold, really icy, really withdrawing. So an introvert already knows how to retreat. But if you're married to someone, you have to work on connecting to a certain degree. You can't just be totally pushing away or withdrawing or looking at the person meanly, giving them evil stares. Introverts can already have an intense gaze. So if you put jerk on it, they will probably wear you out with that gaze. So is jerk a bad word? Someone who is rude, obnoxious, or unpleasant in their behavior. So an introverted jerk, they can dismiss people in a way that could be icy and biting and quietly they could make coffee shiver. So I just watched the news recently and they said the top 3 fears of people. Number 1 was fear of heights. Number 2, social phobias or social anxiety. And which that one surprised me. And number 3 was fear of spiders. So we all have a fear. Me personally, I'm afraid of bugs. I am so terrified of bugs. And one of these introverted jerks, and you might not think this is a big deal, but think of something that you're afraid of and how you would respond if someone was totally dismissive of it or told you to get over it. If you could just get over it, you would. So we can all be a little insensitive when we're not in those shoes or we haven't experienced something. So we all need to be a little bit more sensitive to each other. But anyway, one of these jerks who acted like, I don't know, she was just difficult. And one day we were in the same room together for a second. And I was kind of scared to go into the room because there was a big bug in there. And so I was like, are you scared of bugs? And she goes, well, let me see. You are big and it is little. And it's the way she said it was like, I'm trying to throw a dagger at you. I'm trying to humiliate you for being afraid. And I know people can be dismissive. Somebody else might have said, oh, it's just a bug. It's not going to hurt you. Well, that's a little bit better than, let me see. How can I stick this to you and make you feel stupid, But anyway, that's kind of a small example, but these people were just really difficult to get along with. It was just not a very inviting atmosphere. If everyone has their door closed, which is okay, I'm okay with that. But just when you come outside of the door, can you be a little polite or be a little nice and use protocol? So there were different levels to that. It was like they were all introverted and they were all kind of cold and aloof. Not all of them, actually. Some of them were not. Some of them were actually warm and friendly and kind and helpful. But there was a big group who were not. There were definitely some issues. They could be very disrespectful, very cold, manipulative, narcissistic, just difficult. They would play little mind games, things like, okay, let's meet here and work on this at this time. And then they would purposely not show up and then give you another time and then purposely not show up again just to stick it to you or waste your time, or I don't want to be bothered, so I'm going to do some things instead of just saying, I'm kind of busy and that won't work for me. It would just be like they would take advantage of opportunities to be mean and try to make you feel bad or unwelcomed or totally different from your average introvert. It was just a really mean, vindictive, you say hello and they look at you and won't speak. So let us know in the comments if you think introversion can intensify narcissism and make it even worse, and how do you handle that? And if you're an introvert, what do you want people to know that you think can help to understand you better? And if you're dealing with a narcissist, check out my book, The Workplace Narcissist by Tamara Zyon. I'll put the description in the link below. And I will see you, my lovely, beautiful friends, on the next video. Be sure to like it. Bye.